Thank you for joining us. So again, we are live on all of those channels. So whether you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn or on YouTube, please right now go to that comment section, go to the text box, enter your questions. I'm going to take them live. But to give you some time, we actually told you all on social media we were doing this, and you submitted questions to us. And we took down some of the more fun questions, some of the ones that were asked a handful of times, and we're going to answer them now to give you time to go into those text boxes and those comment boxes. But thank you for joining us. So let's see. On Instagram, Abel V had asked if the public can attend the primary debate that's coming up. So thank you, Abel. So in case you weren't aware, on September 27th, so 3 weeks from today, the Reagan Library, the Reagan Foundation, we're hosting the second Republican primary candidates debate right here in the Air Force One Pavilion. It's actually the 5th debate the Reagan Foundation has ever held. We held 2 in the 2008 cycle, 1 in the 2012, 1 in the 2016. And for this debate, we are partnering with Fox Business, with Univision, and with Rumble. And because of the size of the debate stage, the number of candidates, and the space within the Air Force One Pavilion, unfortunately, there aren't actually that many seats that will actually be available here on our property. So unfortunately, we are not able to sell tickets. We are not able to invite the public, but we do encourage everyone to watch. It should be a great debate. The one in Milwaukee was fantastic just a few weeks ago, and you simply can watch it by going to our website at Reagan-foundation.org. We will be providing the entire live stream of the debate right there on our website, Reagan-foundation.org. Tim W. on Facebook asked how Ronald Reagan got some of his nicknames. One of the nicknames being the Gipper. So for those of you who don't know, back in the 1940s film classic Knute Rockne All-American, Ronald Reagan played George Gipp, a football player who was dying and from his deathbed encouraged his teammates to win one for the Gipper. And that nickname just stuck with him for the rest of his life. Another nickname he had was Dutch. That's because when he was born, as so the story goes, his father joked that he looked like a little Dutchman and started calling him Dutch. And then as a toddler, which sort of made the name stick even more, his mother got him the famous Dutch boy haircut. So the name Dutch stuck with him from a young age, and that also continued with him through his life. The nickname Rawhide, however, was actually the nickname so designated to the president by the United States Secret Service. When someone becomes president, and if that person is married, the Secret Service gives call names to both the president and the spouse, and so they nicknamed Ronald Reagan Rawhide and Mrs. Reagan Rainbow, and those were their Secret Service call signs. Yumafia on Twitter asked us how long Ronald Reagan owned Rancho Del Cielo. If you don't know, Rancho Del Cielo was their 688-acre ranch in the Santa Ynez or Santa Barbara Mountains. Ronald and Nancy Reagan purchased it in 1974 toward the end of Ronald Reagan's term as governor of California. He loved the ranch. They both loved the ranch, but Ronald Reagan particularly loved the ranch. He loved to be outdoors. He loved to go horseback riding. He loved to use his hands and do physical labor and cut down the brush and build the docks and all those different kinds of things. And he used it during time as governor, and then after governor, and of course during the presidency. It became one of their presidential retreats, and he went there as well after the presidency. The Reagans sold the ranch in 1998 to the Young America's Foundation, and then in 2002 it was dedicated as a California state landmark by the Native Sons of the Golden West. Here's a great question. Scott P. on Twitter asked if Ronald Reagan ever saw the movie Star Wars. Well, we actually can't answer that definitively. We don't know the answer. What we can tell you is that during the 8 years as President of the United States, every film he watched was logged. And during those 8 years, he did not see Star Wars, although in 1984, he saw Star Trek 3. So it is possible he saw Star Wars pre or post-presidential. But during the presidency, he did not. I'm just going to really quickly slip on my glasses here And just to be able to see that we are running on all of our channels. I see someone just asked where the Reagan Library is on our Facebook channel. We are located in Simi Valley, California, which is located in Ventura County. We're, depending upon where you're marking it from, maybe 35 miles north of Los Angeles, really in between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. Thank you for that question. Deborah Greenbaum on Facebook, I'm so glad you visited in July. We really are a beautiful destination, and we're glad you came out. People on LinkedIn, people on YouTube, feel free to ask your questions as well. Rick is asking if Mike Pompeo will return to the Reagan Library. We're not sure. He's always welcome. We've invited him many times. He's a great friend of ours. He's a great supporter of ours in terms of what he's done with us. He even traveled to Berlin with us in 2019 to help us dedicate a Ronald Reagan statue in Germany. It was fantastic. So maybe with his next book, we'll have him out. Please keep asking those questions. We really do appreciate it. We're glad you're watching. I'm going to look again in just a few minutes, but in the meantime, we're going to continue with the questions you guys asked on social media. Do you want to go on Instagram? Asked us what charities Ronald Reagan endorsed. He and Mrs. Reagan endorsed a lot of different charities. A handful would be Boy Scouts of America, the Red Cross, and various different cancer foundations and charities. Chandler on Instagram asked what Ronald Reagan's favorite book was. That might be the easiest question we got. Ronald Reagan's favorite book was the Bible. Elise Pinoza, 1988, asked us on Instagram, what was Ronald Reagan's favorite brand to wear for suits? What a fun question. It's got a great answer, actually. Ronald Reagan loved a Los Angeles designer by the name of Frank Mariani. He was the Hollywood suit designer for the stars. People that wore his suits include people like Bob Hope, Humphrey Bogart, Charlton Heston, Henry Fonda, James Stewart. And Ronald Reagan was introduced to him as a suit maker when Ronald Reagan worked in Hollywood. He loved the suits so much that he continued to wear them when he was governor of California, as well as when he was president of the United States. Now, one of the stories I've always known working here, and I didn't know it was a Frank Mariani suit until this question was asked, so thank you, Elise Pinoza, 1988. In March of 1981, as you know, Ronald Reagan delivered a speech, and on his way out of the Hilton Hotel, there was an assassination attempt on his life, and he was shot. He goes to the hospital, he's losing a ton of blood, they cut off his suit and destroy the suit, of course, because their job, the doctor's job, is to save Ronald Reagan's life. And this suit that was cut open is actually on display here at the Reagan Library. When Ronald Reagan got better and was healed and was back in the White House, and he found out that his suit was ruined, he was so upset because it was the first time he had worn the suit and he had loved the suit. And so he asked the designer to make him a duplicate suit that he could wear. That suit was a Frank Mariani suit. So Frank Mariani made him a second suit, and it is that second suit that Ronald Reagan wore in 1987, June of 1987, when he went to the Brandenburg Gate and so boldly declared, tear down this wall. That second suit is also on display here at the Reagan Library. So great question. Banana08 went on Instagram, and he or she asked what caused Ronald Reagan to switch from Democrat to Republican, and when that happened. So Ronald Reagan was a registered Democrat, and it was after President Roosevelt died that Ronald Reagan began to become disillusioned with the party. He felt that there was too much bullying in the labor market, in the labor movement. He did not like how much of his earnings was being taken away by taxes. And it was in 1962, at the age of 51, that he officially changed his party from Democrat to Republican. But more often, many times, he would often say when asked, he did not leave the Democratic Party. It left him. I do have a handful more questions here, but please keep asking them on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. I do want to take your questions live. Mario S. on Instagram asked us if Ronald Reagan ever wrote anything about his 1985 trip to Portugal. President Reagan visited Portugal in May of 1985. He met with the Prime Minister. And following his time with the Prime Minister, he gave a speech, Ronald Reagan gave a speech to the American people. And in that speech, he said, I'm going to read it, Portugal is a steadfast and valued ally, and I came to Lisbon knowing that I would consult not only with partners, but with friends. Let's see what other questions I have here. Cocktails Compromise on Instagram. I love all these handles you guys have. He or she asked what was Ronald Reagan's favorite food. The president loved all American food. Hamburgers, meatloaf, macaroni and cheese, and pumpkin pecan pie was one of his favorite desserts. Banana08 on Instagram submitted 2 questions. We have his or her second question here, and that question was, who were Ronald Reagan's closest friends while in Hollywood? We can only guess because, of course, he's not here for us to ask him, but looking back at his diary, his autobiography, things he did during his time in Hollywood, governor and president, we can make some guesses by those he spent the most time with or spoke about the most. Those people would include Charlton Heston, Pat Boone, Jimmy Stewart, Frank Sinatra, and William Holden. Reagan Mania 14 asked us on Instagram if it's true that Jelly Belly created a flavor for Ronald Reagan. That is absolutely true. So let's talk about the history. It was 1966. Ronald Reagan, Governor Reagan, was actually a pipe smoker and he wanted to give up the habit. So he started eating jelly beans by the company, the Goelitz Candy Company. And in 1976, the Goelitz Candy Company changed their name to the Jelly Belly Candy Company. And so that's when Ronald Reagan officially started eating Jelly Bellies. The Jelly Belly Candy Company is a Sacramento-based California company, and so they knew that the governor of California liked their candy, and so they sent him Jelly Bellies throughout his time as governor of California. And then, of course, he ate them after being governor. And then when Ronald Reagan was elected president, the Jelly Belly Candy Company wanted to send red, white, and blue Jelly Bellies to the White House for the 1981 inaugural. The problem was there was no blue Jelly Belly. So the Jelly Belly Candy Company created the blueberry blue Jelly Belly and shipped 3.5 tons of red, white, and blue Jelly Bellies to the White House for that 81 inaugural. Ronald Reagan's favorite flavor was actually black licorice. I am getting down to my last 2 questions, so please, if you have any questions, submit them on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm going to get to them in just a minute. Add them to the comment box and we will take a look. We do appreciate you watching. Peter Polheim on Instagram asked us if we could share more about the relationship between Ronald Reagan and Queen Elizabeth. They had a remarkable relationship. They had a true friendship. In fact, Ronald Reagan wrote, I can't remember if it was in his autobiography or in his diary, that he had a hard time remembering that she was the Queen of England, that she was this proper English lady. Because when the doors closed and it was just the 2 of them or the 4 of them, if Mrs. Reagan and Prince Philip were included, he said that she was the warmest, kindest, most gracious lady, and he would forget that she was the Queen. In fact, in a 1983 magazine interview, he called her a truly fine, gracious lady and a delightful person. In his autobiography, he talks about 2 moments of his entire presidency that he will never forget. And one of them actually happens to be his time with the Queen. He landed via helicopter at Windsor Palace, and then he and the Queen went horseback riding along the Windsor Palace grounds while Mrs. Reagan and Prince Philip followed behind in a horse-drawn carriage. He said it was a magical day. He called the Queen a remarkable horsewoman. And then in 1983, in March of 1983, for President and Mrs. Reagan's 31st wedding anniversary, the Queen and Prince Philip hosted President and Mrs. Reagan on the royal yacht, the Britannia, and gifted the Reagans a beautiful silver engraved box, which is actually on display in the private offices here at the Reagan Library. And the president joked that it's a wedding anniversary he would never be able to top. Ben Miller, 1971, on Instagram asked how Ronald and Nancy Reagan met. So as we know, we talked about it in the first question, Ronald Reagan was an actor in Hollywood, and he became the president of the Screen Actors Guild. In fact, when he became president of the United States, he was the first president to have also been a president of a union. And while he was president, there was a young actress by the name of Nancy Davis, and she was being confused by another actress with the exact same name who had ties to communist groups. And of course, our Nancy Davis didn't want to be tied to communist groups or be confused with someone that had ties to communist groups. So she reached out to the president of the Screen Actors Guild, Ronald Reagan, to ask for his assistance. They agreed to meet for a quick dinner just to kind of talk through some of the options and what maybe she could do. And they ended up staying out for hours. And within just a few months, they were dating each other exclusively. Now, In 1952, in March of 1952, they decided to get married, and to avoid all the intrusion of the Hollywood press, they chose to have a very private wedding in a little brown church in the valley with just them, the priest, and then the maid of honor and the best man, who were Hollywood married couple William and Ardis Holden. And they were obviously married until their deaths. So those were the questions I took from you guys on social media, which I thank you so much. I'm going to put these glasses back on and see if you guys have asked any other questions. Stephen Lyon on YouTube asked about how he addressed the homeless population. You know, Stephen, I actually don't know the answer to that, but I'm happy to try and look it up and answer that later for you. But thank you for the question, and thank you for watching. Don Forcus Smith on Facebook has asked if our Holocaust collection is extended. Great question, Don. For those of you who don't know, here at the Reagan Library, we host about 2 special exhibitions every year that are part of your museum experience when you're here visiting the Reagan Museum and the beautiful Air Force One Pavilion. And in March of this year, we opened up an extraordinary exhibition called Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away. It's over 700 authentic artifacts that were direct witnesses of Auschwitz and the Holocaust. The exhibit was supposed to close on August 13th, so about 2 weeks ago, but actually due to popular demand, we have the honor to announce that we have extended the exhibition. It will run through January 28th, 2024, and that's so the exhibition can be open on January 27th, which is Holocaust Remembrance Day. We will not be able to extend it beyond that. It has somewhere else to go. So please, if you haven't seen it yet, do not miss this exhibition. It is so extraordinary. It's important that we all learn from this exhibition so something like that doesn't happen again. We do recommend you purchase your tickets in advance at reaganlibrary.com/Auschwitz. Let's see, Deborah Greenbaum asked if Ronald Reagan had a favorite horse. He loved all of his horses, but there was a horse, a beautiful white horse by the name of El Alamein that he loved a lot, and rode that horse a lot. Again, we want to thank you guys. I don't know if anyone else has any additional questions on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, so now would be your time to ask them. We haven't done this in a while, and it's fun to interact with you guys, but I'm not seeing any other questions right now. So I will give you 1 more minute to add your comments and your questions, and while you do that, I'm going to talk about a few items in our store. We do like to tie in items from our store that have to do with the theme of our live from. It's really easy just to go to reaganlibrary.com/store. Everything we talk about, plus hundreds and hundreds of more items, are on that website. And the things we specifically talk about today, if you go to reaganlibrary.com/store and scroll down just a little bit to our featured items section, you'll see everything that we're talking about. Today, because we're talking about Ronald Reagan, we thought we might talk about our canvas chiclets. These are beautiful pieces of art on canvas that are used with a permanent ink that are guaranteed to last at least 100 years. The first one on the far left here is the picture of the front of the Reagan Library with our presidential banner of Ronald Reagan out front. So when you come up to the Reagan Library, this image is actually what you are greeted with as you walk into our main courtyard, and now it's on this beautiful canvas. The second one, our larger one, is this is a famous photo. This is November 4th of 1991. This is the grand opening of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and Museum, and this was the first time in history that 5 living presidents had ever gathered together at the same place at the same time. It has since happened again, but it was a very big moment in history at the time. And then the third canvas we wanted to share with you is just one of the White House official portraits of President Reagan. It's a really beautiful piece, a photograph that was taken, turned into this great piece of artwork. And again, these are all canvas on frames, so they would hang really nicely in your office, in your home. A really great gift for you or a loved one. And then make sure it doesn't tip over. So I'm going to do one last look to see if there's additional questions. Chad Johnson asked if Ronald Reagan liked Trump. I don't know what his relationship was with Trump. I know he did meet him, but I don't know what their relationship actually was. Robert James Finn on Facebook is asking about Prime Minister Mulroney of Canada. Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney had a great relationship. In fact, such a great relationship that Brian Mulroney spoke and gave a eulogy at Ronald Reagan's funeral in June of 2005. Are there pictures in the library of both statesmen? I believe there is. I happen to be standing near our Flights of Freedom Gallery in the Air Force One Pavilion. The Flights of Freedom Gallery represents the 26 countries that Ronald Reagan flew on board Air Force One to visit. He obviously went to Canada, and I do believe in that gallery there is a photograph of Ronald Reagan with Brian Mulroney. Pete Geed, if I'm probably not pronouncing your last name right, Pete, so I'm just going to call you Pete. Pete says he's visiting for the first time in October. We're so happy that you're coming. Thank you so much. Any suggestions for a first-time visitor? Give yourself a lot of time. The Reagan Library and the Air Force One Pavilion are quite large museum galleries to go through. We used to recommend people spend 2 to 3 hours here just to go through the Reagan Museum and just to go through the Air Force One Pavilion. But now that we have the Auschwitz exhibit, we are actually able to time how long our guests are in the Auschwitz exhibition because of the audio tour that they use. And most guests are in the Auschwitz exhibition 2.5 hours. So if you're in the Auschwitz exhibition for 2.5 hours, and then you got the Reagan Museum and Air Force One for another 2 to 3 hours, you could be here 5 to 6 hours. We do have a great bistro here, Reagan's Bar and Bistro, serving hot food. So maybe time it so you do the Reagan Museum and Air Force One Pavilion, have a great hot lunch, and then go into the Auschwitz exhibition or vice versa. But again, that's my advice to you. Give yourself a lot of time. We truly are a destination. There's a lot to see here. We're 400 acres, so you can spend all day here really easily. I think those are the questions I'm seeing. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Sorry, someone was pointing something out to me, so I looked off camera. But if you want to keep asking questions on any of these 3 channels, we're happy to go back and try and answer them later. I believe we did have another question about Reaganomics from John. It's a really long answer, so maybe I can answer you back in the chat in a little bit. But it was really fun to be able to do this, not just on Facebook, but to add in YouTube and LinkedIn, new things for us. We hope to do more of these. We really want to engage with you. We so appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, we do these on the first Wednesday of every month, so we're going to come to you in October, probably, and talk to you about the debate that we just held. So thank you all for joining us. We really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
And as I walk off into the city streets, a final word to the men and women of the Reagan Revolution, the men and women across America who for 8 years did the work that brought America back. My friends, we did it. We weren't just marking time. We made a difference. We made the city stronger, we made the city freer, and we left her in good hands. All in all, not bad. Not bad at all. And so, goodbye, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.